Welcome to Stories and Songs by Afterglow Music. My name is Joel McCausland.
And I'm Kevin Peay, and we've been creating music for a long time.
We'd like to tell you the stories behind our songs. You know, Kev, most of our episodes in this podcast have been taking a song and then kind of diving into the story behind the song, where it came from, and typically that's stuff we've written, over the years. But today we want to talk a little bit about a different dynamic. We had a chance to go to Nashville a couple of times and record music there, and we had a very different experience in the way the songs came together, the way we gathered them. We wrote a few, and certainly the experience of working with the musicians there and the people who kind of run that music industry in Nashville. That was a fascinating thing. So kind of wanted to dive into that. Does that sound all right to you today?
That's wonderful. Maybe there's a little bit of a storyline in regards to even why we even thought about this.
Yeah.
We were raised a little more countrified, and we were getting some requests through the Afterglow experience in regards to showing up at some county fairs. And we're like, I don't know whether we've got any material and love song and material and religious material. And we needed some music to be able to play at a county fair.
Yeah, more kind of performance stuff, maybe a little energy or stuff you could even put a band with sometimes.
Yeah,
maybe.
And put your boots on and
Exactly.
really reflect on how we grew up. But I remember we did a national anthem, Pleasant Grove Strawberry Days Rodeo. And the announcer...
What was his name?
I don't know, but he's from Oklahoma.
We just saw him the other day.
Yeah, he was from Oklahoma City. And anyway, he said, well, now you two are going to sing the national anthem. And he says, now, what's your name? And we were trying to figure out what we were going to call this country experience.
Because people had a certain expectation when they heard Afterglow. They'd come to know our music as a certain kind of music when they heard Afterglow.
And I'll never forget that he took his napkin, took his pen, and you said, I'm McCausland, and I said, I'm Peay. And so he wrote it down, and he spelled it McCoslyn, for McCausland.
Right.
And then he wrote Peay, Paye. And I didn't think much about it until I looked at it, and then we started talking about after the national anthem and thought, should we actually just change our spelling of our last names and call us McCausland and Peay? And
maybe we're a different act when we're doing this kind of music,
right.
that kind of a thing.
And so that took us into Nashville through that experience, and we actually had Deseret Book that approved our first country album, Close to Home, and you wrote the title cut for that, which was fun because it really reflected the roots where we came from.
Yeah, and that's interesting too. Again, anytime we do something new that's musical, a new musical adventure, if you will, it's challenging. Like, I didn't know how to write a country song. I wasn't even quite sure where to start. And we had a trip down to St. George, and I was thinking about this song. We were trying to get ready, and I had been running it through my head as I was driving to St. George, a thought about that. And I've got family down there too. There was, we're thinking about that whole dynamic. And I had a couple of hours, and I went over to what I guess it's Utah Tech now, Dixie College at the time. And I sat on the lawn in front of their institute building and wrote this song. And I'd been thinking about it for a while, but I sat there on the curb and had a little piece of paper, and I just wrote basically the whole song over a period of about an hour and a half after having thought about it for a few days. And it turned out to be kind of a country song. Kind of surprised me that it worked that way, So it was it's one that I've enjoyed over the years.
Been gone too long, trying to find my way. But I have been searching for the setting sun at the break of day. I've wandered far, looked high and low, but I never thought I'd find my love so close to home. Close to home, closer to love. Only you know what my happiness is made of. I have been lost till you showed the way. From now on I promise to stay closer to home.
And Deseret Book, I think, they had an alternative label, which was called Shadow Mountain.
Right.
And I believe we probably may have released it under that. But they introduced us to Kenny Hodges. And Kenny Hodges had a lot of Nashville ties.
He was going back all the time to do projects there.
And he knew the writers, and he knew Terry Choate. Remember
That's right.
Terry Choate?
Kind of an agent for collecting the songs. And I remember Kenny, we were in a meeting with him, and he basically gave Terry some guidelines, like, can't have this kind of stuff in it. We don't want to have songs about, losing your wife and drinking too much and that sort of thing. Yeah, He said, here's the kind of band they are, the kind of act they are, and here's the kind of songs we need to find.
And we had some incredible songs. And the great part about not only some of the original stuff that was written that we wrote and tried to try our hand at some of it.
Yep.
Close, Roses from the Heart and Close to Home. And then we had a couple of our friends from around here, Barry Gibbons and James Marsden.
Rob Honey.
Rob Honey and Tom Hewitson, who was actually related to me and my wife Cindy. And he wrote a fun one called Could You Would You, Can I Coax You? And we had just a lot of fun with that one. But we get back to Nashville, and do you remember that first opportunity to go to, I think it was RCA Javelina?
RCA. In fact, Diana and I were in Nashville a few months ago and drove down Music Row, and it's still there. And they've kind of transitioned RCA into a purely tourist site now.
Wow.
They might still do some recording, but it's one of the things on the tour. If you get on the big bus, and go around the city, they make a point of stopping at the RCA studios where we went and recorded.
And so when we get there, we're like, for me, it was a deer in headlights, because we get into the studio where Elvis had recorded Love Me Tender, Love Me Sweet.
Right.
And they said that this is the stool that Elvis sat on to record that, and here we are in this same studio.
Which may or may not have been true, but it was a great story.
But it was a great story. But the cool part about it was we met our contractor for that session that Kenny had lined up with Terry, and I believe it was Brent Rowan.
Brent Rowan, yeah.
Who was part of the Barbara Mandrell system, and he had brought a bunch of first call musicians. Himself, Rob Hajakis, who played for Garth Brooks, Steve Turner.
Just got off tour, right?
Just got off
with
tour.
Garth.
Steve Turner, who was a first call drummer, and then I can't remember who the bass player was at that time. But I do remember this. I remember a big truck pulling up, and Brent comes through the door, and he opens up the door of the truck, and here are all of these guitars.
Yeah, they were big rolling cases, right?
Rolling cases.
I think he said he had 37.
No, I remember I said, Brent, how many guitars are in that truck? And he said 74.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, why do you need 74 guitars? And then his answer was, each song has its own specific element, and each guitar will play its own specific sound.
And when he said that, I thought to myself, that can't possibly be true. And yet, in the middle of one of the songs where he had a solo, he had, I think it was maybe a Fender Stratocaster or something like that. He was doing a solo, and he stopped, walked over to the case, and picked up another one, exactly the same brand and model, and said, this one will sound better on this song. Plugged it in, and away he went.
It was absolutely amazing. And the product that was that came out of there, they all wondered how much we had to spend on the mix. And
it's like, can you do it in 3 hours?
Yeah, and they're like looking at us like, what? And then all of a sudden we hear some of the vast numbers of money that they give to the engineer to mix these things for national.
Yeah, like
presence.
spending a month in the studio after all the recording's done.
Yeah,
and just working and reworking every single song over time.
And we said, we got to go home in 3 days.
Right, and we're going to take this with us, and then we're going to do it where it's cheaper, right?
And they worked really hard for these two little guys from, just coming and experiencing this. But wow, what a powerful experience it was.
Another thing about that Nashville experience, exactly what you said. Here are guys who have played for every great musician, every great artist, and yet they made it a point of making our songs better. So typically the pattern there is we would listen to some simple cut. Might have been a demo by some of these other writers that got put together, or something you and I had recorded, just something simple. And they would just put it on the speakers and listen to it while the band's sitting there in the room. And then they'd play it. And they played it typically better than it was on the demo the very first time. And by the time we were maybe 3 times in, they were ready to record.
Oh, amazing.
And they would do things like, they'd stop, somebody would raise a hand and say, you know what, I think if we did this right here, it would be better. And almost every time it was. So we got done with roughly a week's worth of recording, 3 or 4 days in the studio, and we had that album done. And it was so much better than anything we could have experienced or hoped for before we came.
And I think most of the stories we're talking about on this one, I think, came from the Close to Home, the Shadow Mountain Deseret book release. Mm-hmm. And then after that had run its course for a little while, we decided we wanted to go back again, but it was in our favor to actually do it more on an independent label.
Yeah.
And so we went back and gathered a whole bunch of more songs and found some other writers back in Nashville and put one out called No Love Lost.
No Love Lost, right.
And that No Love Lost even got a little bit of regional play, and we started to learn a little bit about what it required in order to really move forward in the Nashville experience. And boy, I'll tell you what, it is an art with a lot of money and a lot of purpose and a lot of focus.
For sure.
And we were just kind of having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And so maybe we needed to rethink this a little bit, but No Love Lost was wonderful. We had some great opportunities, met some incredible people, and McCausland and Peay Spelt Different was a little brand during that little era of time.
Yeah, we kind of folded all that music back under the Afterglow name now, but at the time it felt important to separate it a bit so people knew what to expect. But to your point, about our experiences, we got a little bit of play and a little bit of notice around that second album. And I think we were kind of Afterglow singing country on the first one. And then on the second one, I think we sort of shifted gears and got a little bit more into a mainstream performance type for country, and got a chance to open for Chris Ledoux and for Don Williams at the Events Center, and really had a chance to do some fun things with that music for that window of time when it was kind of getting a little attention.
We had no idea where it was going to go, and we soon learned that it was a lot of fun. And we had a great little departure for a little while in regards to the country world, and as you referenced, brought it back under the Afterglow name, and we titled it Versatility, mm-hmm. Which is the album that people can hear it on.
Has all of our country and love songs stuff all together in one place.
Yeah.
So if you're in a mood for a little different form of Afterglow, that's the kind of place you can get it now.
So maybe, you know what, if everybody wants to hear a little bit of it, we're going to play some of those songs for you, and if you like it, tell some of your friends what we're doing.
Slow down, be cool, it's what you want me to do. Take time, take a breath, you say let's not lose our heads. Well, mine's been lost since I first met you. Couldn't stop these feelings if I had to. No way, no how, not never, not now. No sir, no ma'am, no possible chance. Can't quit, can't stop, can't turn this thing off. You might as well let love start, 'cause I can't stop my heart. Sun reflects the blues, sure as the waves will fall. I love you most of all. I love the courage of a newborn bird in flight. I like the thunder when it lights up the sky, sure as the rain will fall. I love you most of all. We're on a honeymoon, no plans to be back soon. We're on I listened to the radio this morning. They played the song I requested once again. It reminded me of you and everything that we've been through. I never want this song to have an end. I called to tell you just how much I need you. Try to make it right for us again. I wondered if you cared and if the hurt had disappeared. I'm sorry for the things that I have said. I'd do anything you ask me to. I want to show you that my love is true. You're my girl. You're my girl. I'd come to supper with your mom and dad. Pretend your little brother ain't so bad. You're my girl. You're my girl. You're my one and only girl. You own me, you control me. You're my world. I could never live without you. Now I've found you. You are my girl. Believing is seeing when it comes to love. Faith can reveal things like nothing else does. I didn't know you until I finally learned to trust. Believing is seeing. When I started believing, I saw your love. Day by day by day, I will love you day by day by day. If there's one thing I've learned in my life about how to treat a sweetheart or a wife, you can buy all the pearls, all the diamonds in the world, but if you're wise, you'll take my advice. 'Cause a heart can't be purchased with gold. If you want a love that lasts till you grow old, and your love can't depend on the presents that you send, hearts you buy will never stay sold. But it's a load every morning, it's a kiss to say goodnight, and it's knowing when she's had a day that makes her wanna be held tight. It's the kind of small investments that help you keep the love you got. It's the simple things that really mean a lot. It's the kind of small investments that help you keep the love you've got. It's the simple things that really mean a lot. The simple things really mean a lot.